It's Wednesday, August 14th, 2019, and this is the Pro and the Con Show. I'm Michael James Ott, your host. Welcome to the show. So today I've been watching a fair amount of news, and the big story, at least on the cable news networks, is there's a big shootout with Philadelphia police. They got called, well, at least the initial indications are that they got called to some kind of narcotics issue. And then there's apparently, even at this moment, there's ongoing fire with between police officers and some of these people that they came looking for. Now, I talk about the pro and con show, and I talk about the different sources of information, and cable news, television news being one of them. And I've said many times before that we suffer mightily because these channels, so-called news channels, they were created, I don't know, back in the 70s, I guess, is when I remember them. CNN, I think, starting back in the 70s sometime. But they were created with the intent that, okay, there's a channel, and now this channel is going to make money, much like the major networks who had comedy shows and variety shows and then these little tiny segments called news. And what goes on now is that there's this, it's turned into a 24-hour news cycle. And so what was, reporting of some events, in a fairly concise way, has been stretched from 15 or 30 minutes to now 24 hours. And honestly, the news, the who, the what, the where, and the when, it can't handle it. There's not enough news. So I was just watching one of the major news channels, and they had this ongoing discussion about the Philadelphia firefight, basically, between police and these presumed or criminals. And so they're, so here's they have a live camera, like pointed down the street, and they show there's a bunch of police cars and stuff with lights and everything, and then the commentators on this news channel, this cable channel, are just repeating the same thing over and over again, and then they have a new expert, some former police chief from somewhere. Oh, what do you think is happening? What it's all conjecture, and it's a bunch of babbling noise to fill the void. Okay, and it all occurs because people decided that they were going to try to make money reporting the news, and well, I think we're far worse for it in the end. But anyway, let's go through this. So the 5 different websites that I look at, information websites, and just to see how they're just to show their bias by just the way that they're like top stories. Okay, how they differ, because tonight they're very much different. So Huffington Post, the racism that fuels the statue spin. So again, the jingo journalism, the capital letters, the underlying, the pictures of people. And this is about, now there are people arguing over, there's a poem on the Statue of Liberty, and people are arguing over whether it means all people or just white people. And then their follow-on stories, there's a representative named Steve King, and also the stocks have gone down considerably today because a couple of key indicators in the bond markets have crossed, basically, and those key indicators have always predicted a recession coming within, I think the maximum has been 2 years, but typically it's within a year kind of thing, I think is what I remember seeing. But anyway, the Huffington Post. So that's the top 3 stories, Huffington Post. Okay, CNN. CNN has the Philadelphia police shooting thing in here, and also the story about Representative King, and the story about the Dow going down. So those are the 3 top stories on NPR or on CNN. On NPR, it's about the stock market. The stock market, there's no mention of Representative King. And okay, that's about it. So then we go to Fox News, and their story is the harrowing shootout in Philadelphia, which is ongoing, and then there's still remnant stories about Mr. Epstein. There's a lot of stories about Mr. Epstein, basically, and then the stories from some of the shootings in Ohio and California are the top lead stories. And also, they're taking some shots at CNN, and they say CNN had an awful week, and they did, actually. So just throw that up there. There was 3 different people that had some significant stories about them. So anyway, but you can see the difference is who's reporting what, right? So, and then Breitbart, it talked about the CNN, the 3 different stories on CNN. Well, one of them was April Ryan, who was a correspondent on CNN, and there was some kind of I don't know what it is, some kind of misunderstanding or some kind of I don't know. There was an altercation between journalists and people around Ms. Ryan. She was about to give a speech, and certain journalists were not allowed to videotape it or whatever, for whatever reason. And it's a strange story. But anyway, so you can see how these different streams are presenting news, so-called news, and they're presenting what they want you to see, right? And they're totally ignoring, like Breitbart. Oh, it does. Okay, there is an article in here about the Dow going down, but it's like hidden. There's one little tiny reference to the stock market going down today, and the rest of it is mostly about CNN and slamming on CNN in one form or another. So if you were a consistent viewer of Breitbart, you would walk away from today's information seeing the world very differently than someone who is a routine viewer of Huffington Post's information. Do you see? Do you see? And so the world is all of it. Okay, that's why this is called the Pro and the Con Show. The good and the bad, the for and against. The world is all of these things. And if you are blind to them or not willing to make the extra effort to understand that these other things are going on in the world, you're going to be ignorant to them. And ignorance is going to allow other people to do things to you that you don't want done. All right? Okay, well, so today's session then, just to summarize, pointing out the very marked differences between the different information streams, talking about the basic core problem of this 24-hour news cycle that has led to the launching of all of these different sources, and because there is so little news, the who, the what, the where, and the when, they embellish it. And when they go about embellishing it, well, why not embellish it the way that they want to? The way that either maybe just unconsciously or consciously. They want to change things to better reinforce their own views. All right, so for Wednesday, August 14th, 2019, this is Michael James out once again for the Pro and Con Show. Bye for now.